Welcome to the Innovators Insider Podcast. My name is Mike LaFleche, the professor. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Richard Doyle, the user group guy out in Las Vegas. How are you doing today, Richard?
Doing pretty good, Michael. How about yourself?
Couldn't be much better. It's a beautiful day here in Boston. It's kind of dark in my room, but if I opened the window up, you'd see a big beam of sunlight shining on in. And that's my attitude today. I think it's a great day, a lot of good stuff happening. And, there's a lot of good stuff to talk about today relating to some really good content that our team puts out every year. We'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about a great tech tip with one of our engineers.
Yep. We're going to have a pretty good show. And we're going to start it off by talking about the ebook that you mentioned, The State of Product Design. Since 2019, Onshape has put out the State of Product Development and Hardware Design Report. We commission that annually using an independent third-party research firm. And they conduct a pretty broad-based industry survey on product development. In fact, this year, more than 800 engineering and manufacturing professionals answered the questions that were related to business growth, some of the barriers that might limit that growth. They talk about employee recruiting, retention, and training, and individually how their influence on the design process within their company affects their job satisfaction and their career advancement opportunities. So we're going to focus on a couple of the segments of the State of Product Design today. We're going to highly recommend that everybody go and download the ebook and read entirely through it. So why don't we go ahead and we'll bring in our first guest. He's actually the author of the State of Product Development Report. He's the content director at Onshape. Please welcome Darren Garnick. Hello, Darren.
Hey, Darren.
Hey, Richard, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you bet. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
Oh, apologies about the clutter. I didn't have time to clean up before the show.
You're a writer, Darren. If your room was not cluttered, we would be very suspicious.
Good exactly. Point. And even so, I'll bet you know exactly where everything is at any moment.
You bet.
So, Darren, why don't we start off? Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, where you come from, what you do?
Sure. So I'm the content director for Onshape, which means I write and edit ebooks and blogs and customer stories and videos. And the annual State of Product Development and Hardware Design Report is one of my core responsibilities during the year. It takes up a full month of my time. Oh, what else about me? Before joining the world of CAD, I was in the journalism world. I worked for a bunch of newspapers and also made documentary films. And I also worked for one of Onshape's competitors, something that rhymes with Schmalid Works, which doesn't make me very unusual because I'd say 90% of us once worked for SolidWorks.
In one fashion or another, I think all three of us on the screen did.
Yes, another, and maybe another coming on. So yeah,
Darren, you're also into community outreach, and you do some volunteer work, don't you?
Oh yeah, I didn't realize this was going to come up. I started a really unusual charity where I collect baseball cards of players from the Dominican Republic, and I give them out to kids in the Dominican Republic where there are no baseball cards, which is really, really odd because the DR is one of the most baseball obsessed countries in the world, and there's no baseball cards. And so I've physically gone down there and handed out cards to kids at Little League fields with, cooperation from local coaches and such. And I also do it year round through the mail. Collectors around the country send me their baseball cards and I send them to the DR. And I'm trying to think of some cat angle to this, but there really is none. It's just a wonderful hobby.
Well, I don't think there needs to be a cat angle to that. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and I'm sure all of us are very proud of you. I was a baseball card collector when I was a kid that didn't realize that 40 years from where I was, those cards were going to actually be worth something. So a lot of them ended up in the spokes of my bicycle. But that's another story. So let's get back to the State of Product Design here real quick. Can you give us a little bit of history? When did this all start? How did this come about, Darren?
Sure. This is our fourth State of Product Development and Hardware Design report. We've been doing it since 2019. And the idea is just like the President of the United States has a State of the Union address. This is our State of the Union address for the entire industry. There's no other reports out there like this. When you read about employment reports or job satisfaction studies, they lump everything together. So like retail workers and restaurant workers and doctors and lawyers will be lumped in with engineers and manufacturers. And so the SOPD report is really the only place where you can see how engineers and manufacturers feel about their industry and what their outlook is for the next year.
Nice. Mike, you must have some questions for Darren.
Well, I always wondered, I mean, the State of Product Development report. I mean, it's a big book. I love everything in it because it gives me like a guiding compass, if you will, like I know where north is, when this book comes out every year. But there have been a lot of things that surprise me, but some things stay the same in each report that I seem to pick up on. Are there any things that you have seen in common over the last 4 years? I can think of a couple, but maybe I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. The thing that blows me away is the lost time or wasted time statistics that we have from year to year. We concluded. Oh, let me back up. We had 800 respondents, more than 800 respondents from across the product development world, and that spans both frontline engineers and manufacturers, people working on the factory floor, all the way up to middle managers and CEOs, and so it's a really broad-based look at the industry and how the industry feels about itself. But what am I surprised about? Like I said, for the past 4 years, we've found that engineers feel that they're wasting their time. They're not getting to spend as much time as they want on engineering, on design, on CAD. What are they doing? They're dealing with IT issues. They're dealing with computer crashes. They're having to redo their work because of data corruption and not getting to focus on what they care about most. That might sound like propaganda from Onshape, because Onshape talks about how you don't have to deal with zero, you deal with zero IT and you can focus on more design. But the remarkable thing about this study, and why I think everyone should read it, is that only 7% of the respondents are Onshape users. So the bulk of the respondents use 14 different CAD systems. And so we're getting a true snapshot about how engineers feel about their work and their processes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great point that these people that are responding to the surveys are not just Onshape users. They're people across the industry, and they're all saying, similar things, right? With this, it's funny, being out in the real world and working with engineering companies. Engineers are kind of an island of themselves when it comes to taking care of in the feeding of their CAD systems and the special things that they need to keep their things up and running, because it's not the standard stuff that your Microsoft certified like IT technician is going to be handling, right? It's stuff that is it's different, right? And a lot of times your best engineers end up being your best technical people in a small to medium business, and they're the ones also managing the administration, the servers. The larger a company gets, you might have dedicated people to this, that you hire CAD managers and things, but quite often, not every company is IBM or HP or Dell where you have a huge IT staff that's going to be able to support you, right? So I find that to be something that over the last 4 years I've noticed, is that engineers feel like they're wasting a lot of time when it comes to managing and deploying their systems.
Yep. Yeah, and wasting time is really a misnomer, because it's not like the engineers are slacking off and going on to TikTok and seeing the latest videos. I mean, they're doing tasks that need to be done, and they need to be done because of the flaws in their software.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's well put. That's the strongest put I have heard that on the show, Darren. We should have you on more often. But it really is true. It really is true.
And you know, that's what, in fact, that's the second highest response by the survey respondents when they waste time is dealing with CAD administration. And it's just a little bit less than unnecessary meetings that could be handled by email.
You did a great job in the last show, I think it was, or the show before last, Richard, on the costs of CAD and maintaining it. And it's really, it really shows well in this report. If you read the report and you watch that show, we'll put it in the show notes when we publish this. Yep. It would be interesting to get that cross correlation because it is true.
And, on top of all of that, it has to affect both productivity and your general well-being when you're having to deal with all of these issues and you're not getting the job that you want to get done. Doesn't make for happy employees.
What, Darren, when you first saw Onshape, I always like the origin story questions, right? When I talk to somebody that's been around the block like all of us, but what did you think of Onshape when you first heard of it? I mean, you're not a mechanical engineer, right? You're more of a journalist, so it's a different take.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious.
Right. So before coming to Onshape, I had never really written about 3D CAD. Ironically, I was writing about 2D CAD for Dassault, and there's very limited use of 2D CAD now. 3D CAD really fascinates me. I have to say, I might get fired for saying this, but I hate software. Like, it bores the hell out of me. It really does. And the thing about CAD software, though, that fascinates me and keeps me energized is that it's the backbone of the economy. It's the backbone of everything. Like John Hirschtick once told me this, and it really has stayed with me. And it's, look around your room. And every object you see in your room, from your stapler to your computer to your office chair, it started its life out as CAD. And if you go outside your room and stick your head out the window and see the real world, that's even more true of everything you see, except if it's organic, right? So almost everything starts its life out as CAD. And so the four of us here on the show are really, really lucky because one day we might be talking to someone that makes an Air Force jet, another time like a pacemaker for a heart. And so that's what I love about CAD in general. Now, I know that wasn't your question. Your question was, what did I think about Onshape? And I have to say, I was blown away by Onshape's value statement, the idea of collaborating either either in sync or asynchronously. The idea that engineers were still working on their individual computers and weren't seeing what each other was doing blew me away because Google Docs has been around for a while and kids today are collaborating in real time, and the idea that engineers who are the earliest adopters of technology, like, think about it, like the people we hang out with, they get excited when there's a new Apple conference, right? And there's going to be an announcement and they're there on the screen, like in real time, or waiting in line for the iPhone 15 or whatever number it's on. And these people are stuck with 30-year-old technology. So that was really what surprised me.
Yeah, and it's still shocking and surprising that we still talk about this now. But it's hard, right? It's hard to make changes, especially in a system where you've built up lots of stuff over the years. But there comes a point, where you have to weigh, how much time you're wasting, right, and how much how much you could get out of, switching to a newer way, more agile way of doing things, perhaps. So it's that's
Right.
interesting. That's interesting, Darren. I think that's
And back to the wasted time idea. So it's not like these things don't need to get done. When there's a brush fire, you need to put it out. But when with engineers making well north of 100K each, you think about if you're having them. I used to change the water cooler at my old job, right? Because there was no one else to do it. And but if I was changing that water cooler every 10 minutes, my employer would be wasting their money on me, really. And that's what's happening with engineers. Every 10 minutes, they're getting interrupted by something.
well put.
Yep. All right. Well, Darren, first of all, great work on the SOPD ebook.
Thank you.
I'm fascinated by it. I've actually read through it about 3 times now. Because I want to make sure I understand it completely. And like Michael said, it points you north. It gives you some idea of what's going on out there in the world and in industry. And we really appreciate you putting it together. We appreciate you coming on the show. And we hope you don't get fired. We absolutely do need you here. So
Appreciate that.
thank you very much.
Thank
All right,
you,
well,
guys.
We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was great talking to Darren Garnick.
Yep, a lot of energy there.
A lot of energy.
Yep.
Little known fact, Emmy-nominated person.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we'll have to, see if we can get him one of the actual trophies at some point, and we'll see that in his background.
Yep. And I love the baseball card story, and I know he was surprised by that, but I had to bring it up. I just wanted everybody to know what a great guy Darren is, and some of the fascinating things that he does. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So now we've got another guest, have we, Michael?
We do. We have another guest. He used to work at a company that rhymed with Schmolled Works, as as Darren mentioned. But he's been a stalwart Onshaper since ever since I've come across Onshape. But I've Paul Chastell is joining us today. Senior vice president here at Onshape on the R&D team. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul.
Well, thanks for inviting me onto the show, Michael. Great to be here.
And we're lucky to have you.
And I'm sure you're not, I'm sure people have seen you before. People that watch the show typically attend other events, and I'm sure they realize, who you are a little bit. But maybe you could tell us just a little bit about yourself, where, what you do at Onshape, but what your heritage is, what your stock is, as they say.
Well, I've spent almost all of my career, in fact, doing mechanical engineering software, Michael. I mean, as you say, worked for a company that rhymes with Schmolled Works back in the past, and originally started in the UK and then moved here to head up the development team 15 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. Shifted over to California for a few months, and then got attracted back to a new startup that turned out to be Onshape almost 10 years ago now. Started out coding with Onshape and building up the sketcher and other parts before, a few years back now, leading the R&D team.
So your
fingers, what I do today now,
are all over the foundational elements of Onshape. The sketcher, and it's really cool, to know that kind of stuff. I've been using Onshape. I was one of the first customers that stuff is still pretty good. We haven't had obviously there's a lot of back end stuff that goes on, but the way you sketch things just feels good. Things that feel good in Onshape are probably a result of actions that you took in the early days in having this. It must have been a nice clean sheet of paper. When you came from from where you were to Onshape. I bet that must have been an interesting feeling.
Well, it was nice to have the clean sheet of paper, but at the same time, we had new challenges we had to look at with the distributed nature of Onshape as a native cloud system. I mean, we always had to make sure that things are going to work well, especially with a sketch where you want things to be snappy. So there was a lot of new approaches we had to take and a lot of new innovations. But it has to be said, if it's working well today, Michael, that's nothing down to me. I haven't touched the code in years. If it's working well today, that's because of my team. And any bugs you see are probably still mine from way back.
Well, we know where to find you if we need to get them fixed. So state of product design, it's very good report. A lot of design professionals out there said, I think it was almost like 80%, something like that in the report, expected their company to grow over the next year. Onshape's been growing, of course. High tech seems to be a good place, for company growth lately, even though, some of the news out there is a little dire, with economic stuff and everything. But it seems like high tech in the companies we work with, seem to be okay. But with the current economic state, why do you think they'll see growth?
Well, I mean, as you say, we are facing some interesting challenges right now, and a lot of concerns about the future, possible recession, and so on. But there's a lot of stuff that is going on right now, and a lot of changes that I've seen over the last couple of years. Just, electric vehicles. Take that as an example. Right, a couple of years ago, if I was on the T going into Boston or walking through Boston, maybe I'd see a skateboard or a bicycle. Mm-hmm. But recently, going back into the office after a few months out, I'm seeing a lot of different things here. I'm seeing electric unicycles, I'm seeing electric skateboards, I'm seeing scooters, and out on the roads and on the T, many more different sorts of electric cars on the road. And so there's a lot of growth, maybe prompted by the way that we're changing work, maybe prompted by the economic situation, but there's a lot going on there. And then if you look in the medical space as well, I was really quite excited actually to see on TV, insulin monitoring systems that are there on TV, advertising to everybody, right, in prime time. And but it's very important, right? It's a real change to someone's life to have something less intrusive that's going to monitor your insulin levels, and to be continuing to make that progress and having to make that progress, through competition or innovation is still important, regardless of what might be around the corner.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, those new products are awesome to see. I saw that same commercial, I think, watching football, a couple of weeks ago, and new products, category growth. These things are always going to happen. There's always going to be the need for new products. As Darren was mentioning, you look around the room, there's everything you need was designed by an engineer in a CAD system. That probably isn't going away. Right.
And some things you need, like you need a new iPhone, right? You need a new phone because you want to have one, and there are some things you need because you really do need it. And yeah, that's going to continue.
I have an awful lot of things that I wanted but didn't necessarily need. So, Paul, with the fact that most people think, most of the respondents think that their companies are going to grow, one of the things we keep hearing about is, the lack of manufacturing personnel, the lack of engineering personnel. I mean, there's a lot of job openings out there. I think is talent recruitment, is employee retention, training important? Is that going to be going forward here?
Well, I mean, there's some real challenges, right? Over the last few months, we've seen a number of people that have either changed jobs or they've quit their jobs and found something else. And so what I think you're seeing there are companies that are trying to grow and they're hiring new people, but they may also be hiring to replace people that are left, and they're competing with companies that have lost people and are trying to replace them. So there's a lot of hiring going on right now for a limited number of people.
What about some of the barriers to employee retention? The big thing now is work from home. Seems like everybody wants to work from home. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they want to do it part time. Some companies are all on board with it. What situations really are conducive to work from home as opposed to maybe not?
Well, in my job's a little bit different, right? The job we do here at Onshape, it's all software. There's a lot that we can do from home. There are people that we have have joined Onshape over the last couple of years, not anywhere close to Boston or any of our other main development offices that are working entirely remotely, and that works out just fine. It's maybe not quite as easy in the manufacturing industry when you've got to do some things that are physical, at least some of the time. But that's one of the challenges maybe with recruiting right now, with the economy as it is or could be. Is trying to relocate people from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. I know that myself, I've crossed the Atlantic to come over here several years ago, and I've crossed across the country twice for work, and I'd be less likely to move, I think, right now. So maybe people are less willing to move around, and also there's not so much need to move around because there's this opportunity for remote work. So the ability to be able to work remotely, having software and processes that support that and make it easy to do that is key.
Yeah, indeed. It's it's just much, we're lucky at a software company being able to do that. We do hear, I talk to a lot of customers. It's very nice not having to worry about that infrastructure if you do find yourself having to work from home. A lot of people haven't gone back completely. They have a hybrid environment, right, where they might go in 2 or 3 days a week, but that actually makes kind of an even bigger problem if you don't have a good setup, right, for handling that, especially if you think of the way engineers in the mechanical engineering space work. If you have a CAD workstation at work, you go home, you gotta copy the files, pack and go. You got to check out your license, from your license manager, make sure you have access to it so you can take it out of the pool, go home, work on that. What if you forgot your standard hardware library when you did your pack and go, and all of these different things that you have to think about actually become kind of worse if you have a system set up for not to kind of handle things in a more sassy way, like a Google Doc. You never have to think about that, right? You just kind of start your Google Doc on one computer, you walk away, you go home, you might need to answer a quick comment or a question, you sign into the same Google Doc. You don't have to pay attention to, like, I know you use a Chromebook from time to time, right? And you're able to go to any other computer and access the information.
I do, and I have I have a Windows machine I use as well. But I went into the office with just a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to take my charger in because I'm working from home and I'm working from the office. So I take everything around with me in various places. Forgot the charger; that was still at home, plugged into the wall. And so I got an hour in, and then the battery was drained on my laptop. And I had a bunch of stuff going on that day. I didn't have time to try and find another charger because my laptop isn't as standard as some of the others around there. So I just got another laptop that was lying around that I borrowed, and I was able to use that for the couple of hours until I got done with my meeting, so I could run down and get a charger from IT, so I could charge up my laptop. And I was able to do that because everything that I do, everything I'm doing today, this is a cloud-based system we're using here. All of the docs, everything I do is in the cloud. And so I can just do that, and having that freedom for mechanical engineering as well is important, and that's something that obviously the Onshape provides.
Yeah, for sure. It's just we hear this hybrid environment. We hear how even if we did not work from home anymore, I think the genie's out of the bottle. Like it's just much easier to have the flexibility and freedom to not have to worry about grabbing all those files and license codes and things like that. And that's something sort of new on the report in the last couple of years, obviously, with everything going on. But it's really interesting that there are tools out here to help us, and the cat, we're responding obviously by where the schools have completely gone crazy using Onshape because of this, right? The days of going to the CAD lab are over. Essentially, once you start looking at Onshape, you don't have to have certain hours you go into these places, and even if you could get them.
First robotics teams can collaborate with each other from home. Again,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily need that meeting space all the time.
Right. And of course, this is true for all the large companies that are using Onshape as well. We have a number of stories up on the blog that talk about, what happened when people had to kind of shift and adapt their working environment, and how easy it was to do an Onshape and how it wasn't in the others. I guess that's the way of summing it up. It takes weeks to kind of work through those scenarios and changing licensing and everything like that. But that didn't have to happen with Onshape. So it's really, really cool to see. So even if we do get back to normal, I don't think it'll be normal like it was before.
I don't think it will be. I think things have changed, and I think we all have to sort of adapt to that change, and things are quite possibly going to continue to change for a number of months ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I have confidence. I have confidence in human beings, and I have confidence in corporations, and I have confidence in this country. We're going to get through this. We're going to be all right.
I like your attitude, Richard. I need a daily call with you to get feeling good again about things.
Exactly.
How about you, Paul? I don't know your origin story. Like, I don't know why you entered into this crazy world of CAD. I mean, because it is crazy.
Purely by accident. I was a mathematician at college, and when I went out, I started looking for jobs. I went to an employment agency to get them to help me look for jobs, and I said I wanted to do mathematical modelling, and they sent me a job interview for somewhere doing solid modelling, Parasolid, owned by EDS at the time in Cambridge, UK, and it was nothing like what I wanted to be doing, but when I looked at it. And going back to something that Darren had said, and I'm looking at it all through, and then there was a program on TV about the design of the 777 or something. Probably wasn't 777. It was so long ago. It might have been like 737 or something.
Yeah.
Given how old I am now, Michael. But it just happened to be on TV at the same time, and they showed some CAD systems there, and it just was like, this actually looks really interesting. And so I went for an interview, and I ended up getting the job. And that was my start, and I got hooked, and I went and I started working for SolidWorks. And what always floats my boat, as it were, is not seeing what we do, not seeing the product that we make, the software that we make, but seeing what our customers are making with that software. And yeah, I think was it Darren again was saying about you could look around the room. Well, I can look around the room and I can point at things designed in the software that we make. It's not just that was done in CAD.
Mm-hmm.
But I can look at things and say, yep, I know what these were designed in. I had a part in that in some small way.
Yeah, it would be awesome to have like a marketplace you could buy like products designed from. I always try to do it myself. I always try to find the Onshape products and try to use them. I have a few around my office here. I don't want to like call them out because for privacy reasons, but it's always a fun thing to do, to actually use the products that are designed in your CAD system and then see the way the surfaces blend together. And some of these products are pretty advanced, so it's nice to have something to do with that, just a little bit. The emotional paycheck, John McElhaney commonly refers to it as. He's been on the show before. We'll have to have him on again, talk about some more of that stuff.
Yep. Oh, it's been a pretty good conversation here.
It is. Anytime we have a chat with Paul, I always enjoy being in the office, being with you, Paul. It's always a good time. There's work that's happening, I promise. But it's always good to
there is.
To see each other. So
It was great to have Darren as well. Hey, got some news for you, Mike. Our third segment is not going to be able to attend today.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and we'll reschedule Courtney for another time. I did want to mention one thing, our podcast Halloween contest, if you will.
Yes.
So we have put together a very, very casual contest. You can find all the information on the Onshape forums, and there's the link for you to go just look for a discussion that I started on the Halloween contest, if you will. It's just very casual. We're just trying to have some fun. So go ahead and create your best Onshape part studio, your best Onshape render, or your best Onshape assembly of anything Halloween related. And we'll take a look. We'll pick some of the best and we'll show them off on the podcast episode on October 27th. And we'll take one from each category, part studio, assembly, and rendering, and we'll invite the creators to be guests on the show. So if you're interested, like I say, there's the URL to the forum post. Take a look and get involved.
And if anybody has any ideas on what we should wear for a costume on our Halloween show, please comment in and let us know.
Yep. I think I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to wear, but if folks come up with better suggestions, I'll listen to them. So
let's bring back.
I've got some.
Let's bring back Darren.
Hey, let's do that.
Time to have the Saturday Night Live kind of ending, where we all have the music playing and we're all waving and having a good time.
Yep.
You know. And it's not fake; it's totally real. We are having a good time.
Yep.
So
We're thanking all of our guests. We thank all of our listeners. We ask our listeners to please give us a like if you like what you hear, and subscribe to our podcast so you'll always be notified when a new episode drops. Everybody, it's been a great show. Lots of great information on the state of product design. Again, we encourage folks to download that ebook. There it is, right there, and get your copy and read through the entire thing.
absolutely.
Is dressing as the cloud too cliche? Really?
I think that's totally in bounds, Darren.
Yep.
So if you want to dress like a cloud, we had a couple of Halloween parties over the years at Onshape, and I remember one person dressed like a D20, Dungeons and Dragons. That was the most crazy costume. Corey, yeah, so it was the greatest costume ever. That's the. I will not be sitting here as a dice, as a die, I guess. But I have a couple ideas.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great episode.
It is.
Yep.
So stay tuned, and I hope you all wear your costumes at home as you listen to it as well.
Yep.
All right. All
right. Wave time.
It's time to wave. See you all
time.
later. I really hope everybody had a good time today, and give that report a read. Have a great day. Like us, subscribe. You'll get all the notifications, especially for the live streams too, the watch parties.
That's right.
The next update comes out. You're going to want to see it. So,
Thank you.